There are people who don't just talk to themselves out loud. They gesture. They move their hands. Their facial expressions change. Their tone shifts. Sometimes they stop in the middle of a task, look into empty space, and respond, as if someone were really there. From the outside, this can look strange. From a psychological perspective, it is one of the deepest forms of mental processing that exists. These people are not confused, they are not lost. They are recreating an internal scene with such realism that the entire body becomes involved. The mind does not think only in words. It thinks in images, sensations, emotions, movements. And when a thought carries emotional weight, the body follows. Maybe this has happened to you. You're alone at home, walking from one room to another, and suddenly you frown. Raise your hand as if explaining something. Shake your head in disagreement and answer out loud to something no one just said. But inside your mind, the scene is clear. There is a conversation happening. There is context. There is emotion still being processed. Psychology calls this internal social simulation. It's when the brain recreates human interactions to organize feelings, anticipate responses, or resolve emotional moments that were left unfinished. People who do this are not living in fantasy. They are trying to close emotional loops. Very often, this happens after a situation that didn't end properly. A conversation that was interrupted, a response that was swallowed, a boundary that wasn't set. The brain doesn't like open endings, so it goes back to the scene, recreates the environment, remembers the other person's tone of voice, and this time responds the way it wished it had. That's why facial expressions appear during these moments. The emotion is still alive, and for the brain, this is not just abstract thinking. It feels like experience being replayed. Some people even change posture during these internal conversations. They straighten their back, cross their arms, point a finger, take a deep breath. This is nonverbal communication being rehearsed, not to manipulate anyone, but to prepare themselves. This behavior is especially common in introspective, observant, emotionally deep individuals. People who don't like to react impulsively. People who prefer to understand what they feel before expressing it. Because they didn't do it in the original moment, they do it later, alone. Another common situation happens when the mind prepares for a future conversation. The person isn't stuck in the past. They are rehearsing what might happen next. They practice an explanation, a request, a boundary. They adjust the tone, test different words, and they do it out loud because hearing their own voice helps the brain validate the response. Neuroscience shows that speaking out loud activates brain areas related to clarity, emotional regulation, and decision-making. It's as if the thought stops being scattered and finally takes shape. For some minds, thinking silently is not enough. They need to hear themselves, to organize themselves. During moments of stress, this behavior often intensifies. A person might say, "No, calm down," or "That's not how it is," while shaking their head. This is not madness. This is self-regulation. The brain is trying to regain control under emotional overload. It's also common for people to change tone, as if playing both sides of a conversation, a firmer voice to respond, a softer voice to listen. This happens because the brain is simulating different perspectives. It's trying to understand the other side, even when the other person isn't present. That requires cognitive empathy, emotional imagination, depth. Shallow minds rarely do this. They react in the moment and move on. Deeper minds revisit, analyze, reconstruct. There is another important layer here. People who do this often have a much richer inner world than outer expression. They think in images. They replay scenes. They create complex internal dialogues. The body joins the process because for them, thought and emotion are not separate. Society doesn't teach us how to deal with this well. From an early age, we learn that talking to yourself is strange, that gesturing without someone present looks odd, that this kind of behavior should be hidden. So many people only allow themselves to do this when they are completely alone, far from any eyes. But the truth is, this habit doesn't come from isolation. It comes from a need for internal understanding. People who talk to themselves, gesture, simulate scenes, are usually people who take responsibility for what they feel. They don't outsource their emotions. They try to understand them. There is also a creative component involved. Writers, artists, thinkers often embody ideas before turning them into something concrete. The inner dialogue gains form before becoming action. And here is a quiet truth. When someone can have a conversation with themselves like this, they rarely act impulsively. They reflect, they revisit, they weigh consequences. What may look strange from the outside is often a sign of emotional maturity. This only becomes a problem when it causes distress or confusion with reality. But in most cases, it's the opposite. It's a healthy attempt to make sense of what was lived. People who do this often avoid direct confrontation, not because they are weak, but because they prefer understanding before reacting. They process in silence, in inner dialogue, in private rehearsal. That may be why these people are so often misunderstood. On the outside, they seem quiet, reserved, distant. On the inside, they are constantly moving, talking, adjusting, thinking. And here is one of the most important truths. Those who can listen to themselves rarely lose themselves in others. A well-developed inner dialogue is a form of emotional autonomy. Now pause for a moment. How many times have you replayed a scene while walking alone, answered someone out loud when no one was there, or noticed your face reacting to a thought as if it were happening again? If this has happened to you, you are not strange. You are attentive. You are trying to understand something that mattered. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever caught yourself using gestures, facial expressions, or even changing your tone while talking to yourself? Have you realized you were almost acting out an entire conversation? If so, comment, "I do this," or share a moment that felt uncomfortably familiar. Here, this behavior isn't judged, it's understood. Because sometimes, talking to yourself is not loneliness, it's depth.